Good women. I want to thank everybody for coming today. My name is Amy Poteet. I'm the chair of the Anderson County Republican Women, and we really appreciate you coming today to meet Congressman John Rose, who's also running for governor. So we appreciate you coming today. I would like to ask Mr. Jimmy Matlock, who's also running to be our senator, to come up and start us off in a prayer.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Amy, and we'll pause just now to ask the blessing of the food for those who ate, and ask the blessing over the campaign of the Rose family. Good to see Miss Rose here also. Our Father, we thank Thee this day. This is Your day. You've given us a gift of life. We thank Thee for the beautiful weather. We thank Thee for safety in travels. We thank Thee for Jesus Christ and what He's meant to our lives. Walk with us this day. May our lives be an example for You. May our testimony be such that people looking on will see us as a witness for You. Thank Thee for this great country we live in. Thank Thee for the men and women who serve us, through the armed forces, through the local police and firefighters. God, we're grateful to be an American today. Walk with us through this life. We give praise and honor in Your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And for those of you that don't know, the Federated Republican Women usually meet the second Tuesday of every month right here at Apple Blossom in the back room. And then our GOP meeting, if you have not attended that, is always the third Thursday of the month at the Clinton Community Center. We urge you to join us for those meetings. Come out and get engaged with our Republican Party. That's the only way we're going to stay strong. I'm going to turn it over now to my secretary for the Federated Republican Women. She's also a city council member here in Clinton, Miss Wendy Manis.
Hi, I'm Wendy Manis. I'm Councilwoman Wendy Manis here in Clinton, and I want to thank you all for coming out today. It's an honor to have Congressman Rose stop into our city, and I had the pleasure of sitting with him at TML when you stopped by TML this March in Nashville, and we got to chat for just a little bit and hear some of his ideas of what he envisions for our state. So we're super happy to have you here in Clinton, Tennessee today. He is an 8th generation farmer, and that's just outside of Cookeville. He's a father, a husband, a Christian, and he really takes that faith, family, and freedom seriously on this campaign. Those are extremely important to him. He's a CEO of a business, and it's a software business. And then he is also a congressman. So we want to thank you and welcome Congressman John Rose here, who is running for governor.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Amy, for putting together such a great event. They've asked me to introduce Congressman Rose. I've known Congressman Rose for some time. I knew him when he was with Governor Sundquist, and he was Commissioner of Agriculture back then, and I was very active in agriculture at the time. And I knew his sister, Radonna Rose, who was the CAO and CEO of Farm Bureau for many, many years, even longer, one of my favorite people. And I got to know John and Chelsea one day. We were at a Farm Bureau event, and this was way before, I don't think you've been running for Congress yet. And we met at a Farm Bureau event. We've been friends ever since. But he's been very active. I'm not going to say anything about the other candidates that are running, but the state of Tennessee has always had this reputation for having very good, business-minded leadership for the state of Tennessee. Republicans and Democrats, we've had a line of very good governors. And to me, Congressman Rose fits that bill to take his, to play his part in being governor for the great state of Tennessee. I also got to know him, I guess more on a more personal level. A few years ago, he's been very active with Tennessee Tech and helping that institution grow to where it is now. And a few years ago, we were at a Farm Bureau event, and I think you were a congressman by that time. But he said, Steve, we're thinking about putting Tennessee, an engineering program for nuclear at Tennessee Tech. Could you do something? What can you tell me about it? And we talked about it a great deal, and I picked up the phone one day when the first nuclear company came to Oak Ridge, the first new nuclear company, when it came to Tennessee, when it came to Oak Ridge, I gave Congressman a call and I said, look, if you want to bring some folks down from Tennessee Tech, we've got the first groundbreaking of a nuclear company in Oak Ridge for some time, and this would be a good way for you to interact with all those folks. And he loaded up the president and the dean of engineering, and he brought them to Oak Ridge, and they were there for the Triso X opening. And when they asked him to speak, he said, no, this is your event. He let Congressman Fleischman speak and Governor Lee speak. He was very humble, sat out there and just worked it for Tennessee Tech and the nuclear program that they now have there that's doing very well. So he's always, even though he's not our congressman, he's been very supportive of Oak Ridge and what's going on in Oak Ridge and Anderson County. And I'm glad to have him here and glad to introduce our next governor for the state of Tennessee, John Rose.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Steve, for that very kind introduction. It is good to be with you, and it is, humbling to see this crowd here today. And I'll see that everybody came here to see me, and that the food is just a side benefit of being here. I hear good things about the apple blossom, and so I plan to come back at some point when I can enjoy the food. I've been told never on the campaign trail to eat, that I can eat later when I'm out of the room. So that's how I got this great schoolboy figure. So it has been a little more than a year since I announced that I was running for governor of Tennessee, and as you've already gathered from what Steve said, it's currently my great honor and privilege to serve in Congress. But I've just been in Congress for 7.5 years. I announced last year, the same day I announced I was running for governor, that I wasn't going to run for re-election to Congress. And the reason that I did that is because I believe the founders wanted a citizen legislature. They wanted people like us to go and serve for a season and then come home. And so that, I'm following what I think was the idea, the design that they had. And my political hero, George Washington, he served 8 years as president. He didn't really want to serve 2 terms, but they talked him into it. But I think that is the path that makes sense for our state and for our nation. And so, but I'm a 61. I know I don't look it. You don't have to say that, Steve. I just... But I think I'm at my best. I think that the combination of experiences and the education, training, the upbringing that I got has put me in a place at this point in my life where I have something to offer to Tennessee. And so that's why I'm running for governor. Now, I grew up in Cookeville, and youngest of 4, born into a great Christian home. One of my mentors used to say, John, you did a heck of a job picking your parents. And I'll take that compliment every day. Attended public schools in Cookeville, studied agricultural economics. My goal in life was to take over the family farm. And I'm blessed today to say that I'm an 8th generation Tennessee farmer. And the incredible thing is that Chelsea and I and our sons, a guy is out here somewhere, we get to farm the same land that my ancestors claimed as a Revolutionary War grant in 1790. A 236-year legacy. And so every morning when I wake up and I look out and I see the landscape of that beautiful place, I'm reminded of the sacrifices that my ancestors made, carving out a place on the frontier. But I also turn my thoughts to the future, and I wonder, what will the people here 236 years from now think of us? Will they think Representative Matlock, soon to be Senator Matlock, I hope, will they think that we did our part to stand solid in preserving the Republic and keeping Tennessee true to its nature? And that's what motivates me to run for governor of Tennessee. We're in a good place as a state, particularly if you compare us to the nation. We have low taxes and we have low debt and low regulation, and we're friendly folks. And that's why people are coming here in droves, 500 a day. In the hour or so that we're here today together, we'll lose 10 acres of Tennessee's farmland to development. I don't have to tell you, if we do that for 236 years, there won't be much of Tennessee left. So it's great to be with you, and I want to thank all of those. And I'll give a few shout outs as we go along the way to folks who are here that I'm so blessed to have here. I do want to recognize Jerry and Sharon Harris, Wave Harris's. Their son and I have worked together for 30 years. So if you want to know about me, you can ask the Harrises, and they'll tell you they've got a lot of firsthand exposure through their son to who I am. And with that, I'll just pause and say thank you, and I look forward to taking your questions today. Now, you may wonder, why are we sitting at this table? The day I announced I was running, I said, we're coming to see you. Because it's not about what I want or Chelsea wants for the future of Tennessee. It's about what you want, right? It's about what the people of Tennessee want. And the only way to know that is to come and talk to you and listen to you. And so that's why we're here. We've been to all 95 counties, and now we're on our Tennessee True Tour. We've been to 24 or so counties already on this tour. We plan to get all the way across the state and listen to Tennesseans. And so today we're going to take your unfiltered questions, and I'm going to give unscripted answers, something that you won't see from everybody running for governor. But it's the way I think you get to the best outcomes for Tennessee. So thank you for being here. Before the day is over, and in the days ahead, I hope to earn your vote, and I do ask for your vote for governor.
And I'm Chelsea Rose, I'm John's wife, and I'm proud to be alongside him on this campaign trail. I know you're here to ask him questions, but I want to ask you a question to get things started. Are you proud to be a Tennessean?
Yeah.
Yes, I am as well. I believe that God blessed Tennessee, and that Tennessee is the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of the world, and I'm unashamed to say that. I think we've got it right in the state of Tennessee, and I don't want Tennessee to become more like the states around us or the states far away from us, frankly. And so the reason why I'm so proud of my husband and happy to support him in this venture and work alongside him, hopefully for your vote, is that we want Tennessee to stay Tennessee. If you see his recent ads, you'll hear him close this way. He'll say, if you want to come to Tennessee, you've got to become Tennessee. And we believe that, thank you, we believe that what makes Tennessee great can kind of be summed up in 3 values: faith, family, and freedom. You agree with that? We think if Tennessee can preserve those values moving forward, that we'll pass down a state to our children that we can be proud of. One that's just as good as our parents passed down to us, and maybe even a little bit better. And so we're at this table together because this tour is our commitment as a family, as a couple, to you, that if you elect John as the next governor of Tennessee, he'll be true to Tennessee. He'll be true to the values that make this state great. I just want to quickly introduce our son, Guy. Guy, would you wave your hand real big in the air, buddy? He's the only redhead maybe over there with that bright orange shirt on. He's 8 years old. He'll start 3rd grade next year. We also have a 5-year-old son who's at Vacation Bible School this week. But we're doing this as a family because we want the best Tennessee possible for all families in this state. So thank you for being here today.
So, we've got a few questions up here, so we're going to mix them up. Wendy and I are going to tag team here, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So, you want to ask the first question?
I think they wanted you to go.
They wanted me? See, I already forgot. So, Congressman Rose, and this question surely hits home for me. What are you doing for veterans offices in the VA?
Sure. Thank you for that question, and I get that question a lot. And I will tell you, a big part of my response, frankly, and this isn't true for everything that I will say about what I would do as governor, but here, my service in Congress has really framed and informs what I know about helping veterans, what I see and what I've experienced there. And so but my starting point, of course, comes from a deeper place, which is that our veterans, and by the way, if you're a veteran, will you raise your hand? Let's give them. You know, I am really in awe of those people who have stepped forward and put their lives on the line to protect this country. And we ought to show them respect every day. And as a nation, we've made many promises to them about helping them after they come home from their service. And we ought to honor those promises, it seems to me. And I will tell you from being a member of Congress, and I see my friend Cindy Bashir is over here. She gets to work with my colleague, Congressman Chuck Fleischman, and dealing with issues that come to members of Congress and our offices to help with veterans issues. And what I will tell you is that it's a pretty checkered story in terms of the job that we've done historically, it seems to me. I think President Trump is working hard to make that better. Our current Secretary of Veterans Affairs, I think, is working hard. Doug Collins is a friend who served in Congress with me. And I think he is a straight shooter and an honest broker in terms of trying to improve the situation for veterans. But we ought to make sure that veterans get their benefits. And far too often, when they interact with the VA, they run into bureaucracy. They run into hurdles that make it difficult for them to get the benefits that they deserve. And so we work with them every day to help make sure they can navigate that labyrinth of regulations and bureaucracy to get the benefits they deserve. But the state has a role, and probably anybody in here who's a veteran and those who are involved in government here at the county level, you know that Anderson County has a veteran service officer, and that's true for every county across the state. And those are the folks who are at the local level and paid for largely, almost entirely by local tax dollars to help veterans get access to the benefits that they deserve. And members of Congress help out on that. We also have a State Department of Veterans Affairs that helps as well. And so if you elect me to be the next governor, I will bring all the knowledge that I've acquired from my 7.5 years in Congress and my heart for helping veterans. And I'll end this way because I think there are many things the state can do, but I'll give you just one example that I've experienced firsthand. And that is one of the benefits that veterans are entitled to, many veterans, not every veteran, but many, is called aid and attendance. And I don't know if there's anyone in here who enjoys that benefit or might be entitled to that benefit, but I'll just give you this as an example to illustrate what happens. Last year, first of all, probably 7 or 8 million American United States veterans are entitled or potentially entitled to meet the qualifications and criteria to get aid and attendance. But not every one of them gets it. Not every one of them even knows they're entitled to it potentially. Last year, 136,000 veterans applied for aid and attendance. And this part will shock you. 19,000 were approved. The others were rejected. And the reason for that is very disturbing, because the way the Veterans Administration reviews those applications is that when they get a new application for aid and attendance, they start through, it's a very complicated application, 4 pages minimum. Many of them are scores of pages long when they're completed by the veteran. And the VA gets that application and they start from the first page, top line, and they go down. When they get to the first error they find, they get out their red rejected stamp and they stamp that application rejected and they send it back. Now it takes them on average 2 or 3 months to get to that application, but when they get to it and they find, let's say you left out your middle name and they want your middle name, they're going to reject that application and send it back to you. Now they don't do you the favor of looking at the rest of the application and seeing what else is wrong, like a good teacher would do, right? A good teacher would review the whole paper and say, here are the mistakes you've made. Let's go back and learn and fix that. Instead, they reject it, send it back to you. And then you have to start over. You fix that mistake, then you send it back in. Another 2 months go by. They get down to the 8th line. They find another mistake. They pull out their stamp. They stamp rejected. They send it back to you. Now, here's the problem. At the point that most veterans apply for aid and attendance, they've got about an average lifespan of about 18 months. So you can see that if this process continues on, the reality is that most veterans die and never receive the benefit to which they're entitled. And so how do we fix that? It just so happens there are people who know how to do this. And I think that the state should not only provide that assistance to our veterans here in Tennessee to make sure they get that application completed correctly, but we train our veteran service officers all across the state so they all know how to do this. to assist veterans with getting those applications turned in. That's just one example. Now you might say, well, isn't that going to cost a lot of money if we approve all those veterans to get aid in attendance? Well, yeah, that's true, but it is a benefit we promised to them at the end of the day, so they're entitled to it. But here's the catch on that. If what happens is, for many of these veterans, if we reject aid in attendance, they're going to end up in a skilled nursing facility instead of being able to stay at home for the last days of their lives. And that costs us billions more than if we just gave them the benefit that they were entitled to. And so not only will this be better for those veterans, but it will benefit us as taxpayers. And there are many other ways. One of the things I've worked on in Congress is that we worked hard to get a new veterans cemetery in the Upper Cumberland in White County, so that there is more space for veterans who want to take advantage of the funeral benefits that come with being a veteran. And so these are the types of things, and that's a collaboration between the state of Tennessee and the federal government, so just so you know. So there are many ways in which state government and the governor can be helpful to making sure that we honor the solemn obligations that we have to our veterans. Thank you for your question.
Right, question number 2 for you. What will you do about China stealing our farmland?
Well, it is a problem, and it has lots of repercussions, obviously. Maybe the most noteworthy one is that the Chinese are here, both in their name and surreptitiously buying up land all across the country, including right here in Tennessee. And of course, that presents a grave and real risk to our military installations. It's been well documented that in many cases they bought property that's in relatively close proximity to our military bases. Last fall I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is up in the Clarksville area, as many of you know. It's called Fort Campbell, Kentucky, but most of the base is actually in Tennessee. So, including the main part of the base. And so, but I was there, and the commander was giving me a tour of the base, and we went to the airfield. And they need a new air traffic control tower at Fort Campbell. That's part of the reason he had me at the airfield, to see what that need was. But when I was there, I noticed all of our best planes and helicopters lined up along the tarmac there at the Fort Campbell Airport. And it struck me in that moment, in light of what you see happening in Russia and Ukraine, that I might be looking at the next Pearl Harbor. Because if the Chinese come to attack us, if there was a war, and then let's say they bought an adjoining piece of property or a nearby piece of property that looks like a farm and has farm equipment sheds on it, but let's imagine that those equipment sheds are not full of farm equipment, but they're full of drones that could be used to launch an unprovoked peremptory attack on our airbase. And you can all imagine that happening. It's happened in Russia and Ukraine, again, where they've been fighting with each other. And so it became crystal clear to me at that point that for that reason alone, we should be either stopping or obviously carefully watching who owns the land, what foreign countries are buying property in our country. But it goes deeper than that. When Chinese come here and buy our property, and by the way, they don't let us buy property in their country. They don't let us own businesses in their country. So it's a very unbalanced relationship that we have with the Chinese. And they're our sworn enemies, by the way. They've made it very clear, verbally declared, that their goal is to take down this country. So we don't have to question what their motives are. And so we should stop the Chinese from buying land in the United States.
Yeah! Woo!
Congressman, so we've been very blessed in Clinton and Anderson County. My kids are both went to Clinton and county schools. But in other parts of the state, only 30% of the students can read at their grade level. What will you do to fix that?
Absolutely, and I will tell you from those visits I've had to the 95 counties, the number one issue is education. It's not the one that people talk about the most. They talk about roads more, and we may get a question about roads before the day is over. But the thing that is most on the minds of Tennesseans is the system of education in this state. And there's been a lot of discussion in recent years, the last 2 or 3 years plus, about educational choice. And I think most Tennesseans, and the polls indicate this, most Tennesseans want parents to have options, particularly when they find themselves in areas that have failing school districts. And we have some of those in this state, sadly, places like Shelby County, Memphis City Schools, that the state has recently decided to take over and manage because unfortunately the liberal 50-year plus one-party rule of Memphis has led to just a decaying school system where the truancy rate is 50%. So it's understandable that parents there want to have options. But we have to view that in the broader context, it seems to me. So consider this statistic. Today, 89% of kids in Tennessee are going to graduate from a Tennessee public school. 89%. So we can do things to help give parents that are in failing school districts options. But if we're not getting the job done with this public school system, then we're going to fail as a state. We're not going to get the results that we need. And so I would tell you, I've made a number of commitments here. Number one, we are going to have a commissioner of education who spent time teaching in a Tennessee public school classroom. And some people say, well, is that really necessary? And haven't we had some great commissioners that didn't have that qualification? And we've certainly had some nice folks, and they were very smart and well educated, but I think it's a mistake to go find a commissioner from California or Texas or Illinois or Washington, D.C. and bring them to Tennessee, and particularly when they've never held the chalk at the front of a school classroom.
Amen.
Because you can't expect our 60,000 public school teachers to feel motivated by someone who's never experienced what they experience every day. And how do you lead someone if you've never charged the hill that you're expecting them to charge? And by the way, I'll apply that same idea across the spectrum in terms of the people that we bring into state government to make sure that they know what it's like to be in the trenches for the folks that they're trying to lead. One of the other commitments that I've made is that, I think I've had conversations with innumerable teachers and school administrators and school reform people across the state and parents. And what I hear from them is, it looks like we've got pretty good standards for what we want our kids to learn. And I would say, some people think we test too much, but I would say we do a pretty good job of testing whether we've educated kids to the standards that we've got, but between the standards and the testing is the curriculum. And unfortunately, I will tell you, I've come to conclude, we allow school systems, we kind of give school systems the job of selecting the curriculum they want to use in their school district. But the only providers for that curriculum are for-profit companies, and most of them aren't Tennessee companies. In fact, all of them are not really Tennessee companies. And so they develop school curriculum that frankly doesn't match our standards, but more importantly, I would say don't match our values.
Hear, hear.
And so Chelsea and I have got young children. Guy over here who's going to be in the 3rd grade this next year. Sam who's going to be in kindergarten. So unlike the other candidates in this race, and unlike recent governors of Tennessee, we're going to have a front row seat for what's happening in our Tennessee public schools. Guy is a student at a public school in Smith County, in the county that we live in, and Sam is going to be a student in that school too. So we're going to see that firsthand. And I'll have to tell you, we've been pretty pleased so far. But the cautionary tale there is that the curriculum that our kids get exposed to far too often contains woke ideas, things like equity and diversity, that are not in keeping with our values. One of the teachers that I met with, or actually a whole group of them at a school, was telling me that the social studies curriculum that they're tasked with implementing for elementary school kids teaches them 3 religions. Does anyone want to guess what the 3 religions that we teach them in that particular unit of social studies is? You might guess what it ought to be, but it's not what you'd think it would be. The 3 religions are Islam, Buddhism,
No.
yes, and Hinduism. Might you think we would include Christianity or maybe Judaism? But no, we are teaching them three religions that are very much not in the mainstream in our state. And so those are the kinds of things that, frankly, I think we've got to pull out root and stem from our education system. And so one of the commitments I'll make to you is that we will work hard to make sure that schools have an option to choose a curriculum that matches the values of Tennessee.
Mr. Congressman, I've been here for a while. About the bus. When was the last time we graduated a high school class that could stand in the archives of Washington and read the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the original documents? They can't do it.
That's right. Civics education has a place in Tennessee, and it always should. I think this is where values belong in policy. And in education, this is why family is so important. So you guys know June is celebrated as a special month. Dairy Month, that's one thing it's celebrated about. But Nuclear Family Month is another thing that our legislature prioritized. And what that means is that our state wants to help encourage families to exist, a mother and a father at home to help raise up young children. And that makes an absolute difference, an important difference. They can teach and should be talking to their kids about our Constitution, about the Declaration of Independence, and what that means to them at home. Parenting and school has to go hand in hand. Our son Guy over here, he just finished second grade reading on an 8th grade level. That's where parenting comes in. Because I tell my son, you've got no reason not to be one of the very best in your class. You don't have to worry if you're going to get supper when you come home. You don't have to worry if you have a ride to school. You don't have to worry if you have clothes for school the next day. You don't have to worry if you have parents who are going to say, I love you at night. But he goes to school with a lot of kids that do have to worry about those things. And even though John's family, they came across the Appalachian Mountains back in 1790, and they had a wagon and 11 children, I have a Chevrolet, and I've got trouble getting my boys to school on time. One morning we were running late, and I was taking Guy to school. And we were just a few minutes after the bell had rung, but had to take that walk inside. And I was behind a car, I'd call it a beater car. It was on its last leg. They were also running late. Passenger door swings open, and this beautiful little girl gets out. She's got a ponytail and a backpack that was bigger than she was. She did not seem bothered one bit that she was running late to school. Out of the driver's side, a man gets out, and he's dressed in all black. When he turns around to walk around the back of the car, I notice he's wearing a Waffle House cap. He's got an apron on. It's covered in grease. It's totally disgusting. And I understand this man got up before the sun came up. He worked a shift at Waffle House. He made probably low hourly wages. Then he ran home, got his daughter, and he missed the bell by just a minute or two. But when that little girl walks through the doors of the school, she has the same opportunity that the son of a United States Congressman has. This is the difference between equity and equality. Our children in our state deserve an equal opportunity at the American dream. We shouldn't favor one child over the other. Instead, let's give them equal footing. Inside the doors of a public school is where that can and should happen. And if we can provide that for the next generation of Tennesseans, you're going to see them realize their American dream, because they're going to shock us by what they can achieve.
I see my friend, former Director of Schools here, Larry Foster, and one thing I neglect is that I would not be sitting in front of you had it not been for my involvement in agricultural education and the FFA. And Larry Foster's son, Commissioner Michael Foster, was a beneficiary of that too. And I got to serve as a state FFA officer. Michael did it at a later point in time. I say that, I point that out because for me, even though I went to college and got a lot of education, the experience I got receiving vocational education, what we called it when I was there, now they call it career and technical education, is an important and I would say indispensable part of what we do in education. Because not every kid needs to get, or it will be well suited getting a college education. For some kids, the best path is to learn a trade. And guess what? They're going to do very fine, thank you very much, in a society where we have a shortage of skilled tradesmen. And we got a lot of work to do in this country. And so as governor, I promise you we will make it a focus to make sure that we're offering for Tennesseans, not just high school graduates, but all Tennesseans a chance to acquire the skills that will enable them to take advantage of the job opportunities that are out there for skilled tradesmen.
Well, I know this next question has been on a lot of Anderson County people's minds here and across Tennessee, but what are your thoughts on data centers? Your opponent won't speak on it.
Well, so here's what I would say. I haven't really given my full bio, but in 1992, I was a second-year law school student. I was going to be a country lawyer. That was my plan. That was how I was going to make sure that I could make a living, Scott Burton, on the farm near Buffalo Valley. And Mayor Burton and I share some roots in that part of Putnam County, and right across the river is Smith County, where my farm is. And so I was in law school planning to be a country lawyer, and one day one of my fellow law school students came to me and said, I've got a business idea. And he showed it to me, and I was like, wow, this is a good idea. Now, the problem was we were both, neither one of us had any IT training, and it was an idea to build an information technology company, training IT professionals, which required a lot of software development, and neither one of us had any idea how to program. And so I tell everyone we were too stupid to know we couldn't do what we were thinking about doing. And so he said, what do you think? And I said, I think it's a great idea. And he said, well, you want to be my business partner? And I said, yes. And we started a business in 1992. And we were very blessed. We worked hard. We pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. We didn't get any outside investment, and certainly the state of Tennessee didn't give us any money, I can assure you. Over an 8-year period, we built a tremendous business, and we trained 4.5 million computer professionals all around the world in that company, and was very blessed. And it helped me achieve my goal, which was to keep the family farm in the family, and I didn't have to do it practicing law. I tell everyone I'm a recovering lawyer. And so, you know, that's the perspective and background that I bring as I answer the question about data centers. What I would say about data centers, much in the news right now, and what I would say is not all data centers are the same. Some data centers are probably too big of a burden on local communities, and I believe we ought to empower our local communities to assess each of these things and make decisions about what makes sense for each local community in terms of what they have. Some data centers present tremendous opportunities, and I'll give you kind of the two bookends of that. There's a data center over in my current district that I represent that is the second largest user of electric power in the area. And it creates and supports 8 jobs. 8 jobs. Second biggest user of power. The largest user of power in that area employs 1,000 people. So you can see how that might not be the best choice for that community when you think about the resource drain that creates. And Steve and I talk a lot about and think a lot about electrical energy generation, and obviously that's an important issue right here in this county. And so then I'll give you the other, and so that's one where maybe the local community would want to say, you know, we don't think that's a good choice for us. On the other end of the spectrum, I'll point to the XAI facility in Memphis, Tennessee. And this one's going to shock you because this is not in the news. I was just in Memphis late last week, and I got to visit this facility about 3 months. This is Elon Musk's supercomputer. It's called Colossus. He announced that he was going to build this about 2 years ago, and it's up and going. Not only is it up and going, but they've built a second addition to it, a second part to it that's many times bigger than the first one in terms of its computing power. Now here's the showstopper for you. Musk built this thing, the original engineering of this and the plans, the contractors told him it'd take 5 years to build the first one. The first one was finished more than a year ago and has been operating. They've now come along and built phase 2, which is magnitudes bigger than the first one in terms of its computing power. They started it in October and they finished it in March, and it's operational today. So here in Tennessee, we have the most powerful supercomputer in the world, which is a pretty good thing. And this project has created literally thousands of jobs there in Shelby County. Local people, tradesmen, craftsmen, pipe fitters, electricians that are building it, but also computer scientists and engineers that are helping to maintain it and operate it. So this, I think, is the other example. Some people say, well, it uses a lot of power. Yeah, it uses a lot of power. Most of that power, Musk has built the power generation sitting alongside of the supercomputer. And then they say, well, yeah, but it uses a lot of water to keep it cool. So what did Musk do? He worked out a deal with the city of Memphis to take their sewage water and use it to cool his computer and then treat it at no cost to the city of Memphis. So this is an example of something that is actually working. But here's the magnitude of this, because the state, for whatever reason, is not claiming this. A few months ago, I went to an announcement for Korea Zinc, a new smelting operation in Clarksville, Tennessee. Very meaningful to where we live because they're going to mine zinc from the Smith County area, Mayor Burton, and that zinc, not too far from Buffalo Valley, has 2 rare earth minerals contained in the zinc ore, germanium and gallium, that we have to get from China today. And the state announced that they're going to build this new smelting operation and reopen that mine, and we're going to become self-sufficient as a country just off the ore coming out of Smith County, Tennessee. So think about how good a deal that is. It's a $7.5 billion investment, and the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development touts it as the biggest single private investment in Tennessee history. But they're ignoring something. Think about this. The investment in Colossus supercomputer in Memphis is a $150 billion private sector investment. Now, the state doesn't say anything about it. We can question why. But the reason is because Elon Musk didn't ask for any help from the state of Tennessee. He just came and did it. Now, y'all heard here recently, he's now the first trillionaire in the history of the world because of the power of his ideas and the determination with which he approaches the projects he does. So he put that online. So that's the spectrum. On the one end, we have a data center we don't want. On the other hand, we have the most powerful supercomputer in the world, which is going to enable artificial intelligence. And that's a little scary, but I will tell you it's going to be the most powerful tool in the history of humankind. And as a powerful tool, it can be used for evil, it can be used for good. So we've got our work cut out for us to make sure it's used for good. But here's the power of it. My young son and the kids of his age, they're only going to be limited by their imagination. Think about my company that I started. When I started that company with my partner, we had to learn how to be computer programmers. Today, if we had that idea, we could let artificial intelligence write that code for us, and we could create what we imagined without having to go through the process of becoming skilled computer programmers ourselves. So this is the power of artificial intelligence and the power of those data centers. And one last thought I will share with you. There's a lot of evidence, and we hear about this in Washington, that China is funding the anti-data center efforts in this country. They're putting out propaganda to try to upset people. Why? Because they want those data centers in China. Why do they want those data centers in China? Because if they have our data in China, they control it. And they can use it for whatever purposes they want to. So there are a lot of implications to this. Some data centers we won't want, and we need to be choosy and picky about it, and we need to empower local communities and mayors and county commissions to make those decisions.
And before we move on, I just want to point out, you see John's interest in this topic, and it's because he's gone off and done his own research on this. He's not just listening to the news and waiting on direction. I think that's very important as you consider who you're voting for governor. Pay attention to who's studying the issues, who's developing a perspective and a position based on what the people of Tennessee think, matched up with what makes sense for our state and isn't driven by what's going to get them on the news. I think that's why it's important that we have a CEO as our next executive of our state. Someone who has led more than a political campaign is so crucial for the state of Tennessee.
Congressman, do you support constitutional carry?
Absolutely. And I make this commitment to you, and it may upset some people, it typically does, but I will tell you, if I'm the next governor of Tennessee, I will do everything within my power to make sure that Tennessee has true constitutional carry. And I'm frankly disappointed that our current governor has frankly been a stumbling block to that. And I don't understand it, to be completely honest with you. But I probably need to dig a little deeper there and just say this. You know, we are blessed to have rights given to us by God, but rights memorialized in our Constitution to help we as humans secure those rights in our government. And so we have our First Amendment rights, the rights to assemble like we are today, the rights of free speech, the right of the freedom of the press. All of these rights come at a cost, at a price, right? I mean, if you think about the First Amendment, the right of free speech, we have to hear stuff we don't like. We wished we didn't have to hear. And sometimes we wish we could stop people from saying things that we don't agree with or that we don't like. We get to worship as we see fit. And as much as some people's choice on religion might not suit me as a member of the Church of Christ, that's their right to either believe something different or to believe in nothing at all. And we ought to fight to preserve those rights. And when you hear someone calling to outlaw a particular religion because they don't like it, I say to them, become a better witness. Answer and take up the Great Commission and do your job to convert people. And I'm a Christian, and that's my job to do what God called me to do, which is to spread the good news. And so I think we fight for those rights. The Second Amendment. Let's think about the Second Amendment. You might say, well, gosh, that's pretty expensive because we suffer in this country from a lot of gun violence. People die needlessly. We shouldn't have that happen because some of our fellow citizens abuse the Second Amendment right that they have. They abuse that right. And that's a heavy toll. And we ought to do everything we can while still holding true to the Second Amendment to try to limit and reduce that without trampling on people's rights. But here's the comparison that I make. Yes, this country, because of our Second Amendment, we lose people to gun violence. That is very true, and it's a regretful thing. But think about the nations around the world, including Iran right now, where they don't have a Second Amendment right. Earlier this year, the leaders of Iran mowed down 40 to 50,000 of their fellow citizens because they came out in the streets to protest. In Iran, you don't have your own weapons. They've taken them away from you. And then look back to the previous century, the 20th century, and compare the loss of life in this country to gun violence, which was unacceptable, to the hundreds of millions of people who lost their lives at the hands of despots in countries where the people were not allowed to be armed. And so I would say to you, I think the Second Amendment, while at times costly, and we all don't want to pay that price ourselves, and we hope that our friends and our family and our neighbors don't have to face the specter of paying that price. But the truth is, the price of not having the Second Amendment is too heavy to bear for this country, and we should never take that chance.
Amen.
Why should I vote for you?
I get that question a lot, so thank you. It's pretty straightforward to me. I could say it's because I'm good looking and youthful and really smart, or, and I've got a beautiful wife and great kids. And all that's true, of course, but it really comes down to this. The job of being governor of Tennessee is the job of being CEO of Tennessee. It's an executive job. It's a leadership job. But Tennessee's a big organization. 40,000 direct employees. If you add teachers in, over 100,000 employees. So you need someone who has the skills and the ability and has developed that over time to take on a job like that. And I have that experience from building a business starting in 1992 and then spending my lifetime career building and managing businesses. And so you acquire the skills of knowing what it's like to be responsible for the livelihood of other people. You learn how to take ideas and turn them into reality, how to marshal the talents and skills and abilities of other people, how to manage people. Yes, manage people, that's part of leadership. How to inspire people, how to reward people, and knowing when it's time to let someone go occasionally. How you get people in the right seat on the bus, and all the other skills and abilities that go with just simple things like knowing how to read financial statements, knowing how to know where things sit in terms of the performance that's being achieved. Today I serve in Congress. The last 7.5 years I've done that. And I will tell you that job is very different. Being a legislator is very different from being the leader or manager of an organization. How is it different? Well, as a member of Congress, my main responsibility, my first line responsibility, is to push the green button or the red button. Now, I don't want to trivialize that too much because sometimes those are weighty decisions and you need to study and be informed. That's true. But here's the distinction that really matters. When I get done voting yes or no, however thoughtful I was about that decision, the work product that we complete in Congress or that the state legislature completes, it gets handed to the executive branch, to the president or to the governor. And they have to make it happen. Legislators don't have to do that. And so I would tell you, if the person that you're thinking about voting for has a whole lifetime of only experience in the legislative branch, then they're not going to be prepared to do this job. And so in the Republican primary, you've got three choices, three options to choose from. And I would tell you, if you were the hiring committee, and I would submit to you that you are as the voters of Tennessee, you're the hiring committee and you got 3 resumes in front of you. Now I would tell you if I was, and I get a vote too, but I would tell you if it was my business and I was looking at the 3 applicants and I saw that 2 of the 3 don't have any of the relevant experience to do the job, I probably wouldn't even give them an interview, right? I might go out and try to get more resumes, but I probably wouldn't spend my time talking to people who I knew had never done the job that I'm hiring for. And that's the case here in the governor's race. I'm the only one of the 3 who has the relevant experience for this job. And I think Tennesseans get that. Obviously, it's my job to make the case to Tennesseans, but think about the governors that we've had over the period of my lifetime, the last 50 or 60 years. The most successful governors that we've had, Democrat and Republican alike, brought business experience to the table. That's where their chief experience and background was. And those that have been most successful brought that to the table. And the ones that have not done as well, they didn't have that experience. So if you hire someone that doesn't have that experience, you're going to get a lot of on-the-job training.
And I would add too that I think Tennesseans deserve a governor who will listen. I think that you and we deserve someone who will take your questions, who will sit down with you, who will respond to what you say when you say it, not later, not after someone's prepared a statement or they field tested it, but instead to just talk to you about, what's on their mind. I think that's very important. He's the only candidate who's doing a tour of this kind. I think that tells you a little bit about what we're used to in Tennessee and what we expect from our candidates versus what we're getting. And lastly, this is really important too. I think that you deserve a governor who will know the way back to Clinton after you elect them to office. They don't just show up during election season and then you don't see them. Maybe you see them on TV and that's about it. But if you don't see him back in the Apple Blossom Cafe after he's elected governor, come horsewhip him, please. I'll help you find him because you deserve better from your governor and your elected officials.
Take that as a warning.
Yeah.
Congressman, a little earlier you talked about the VA, Veterans Administration and some of the challenges that they have. How will you fix access to health care in rural areas?
Yes, it's a very good question, and it's one of the top 5 issues that I've heard from Tennesseans all across the state. Education, infrastructure, roads, access to health care, access to energy, and economic development, job creation. Those are the things that Tennesseans are telling me about. If you're in Memphis, they add one onto the list at the front, which is crime. But access to health care is a big issue, and here's why. In Tennessee today, in recent years, we've lost more rural hospitals than any state in the country, with the exception of Texas. And they got a lot more counties than Texas, and a lot bigger state. And so, I have firsthand experience dealing with this issue in my current job in Congress. Of the 19 counties, and I represent Scott County just to the north of us today, and they thankfully still have a good hospital there. But 5 other counties of those 19 do not have hospitals, and 2 of those counties have lost their hospitals in fairly recent years. And so when I came into office, Fentress County had lost its hospital, and this was a real problem to them because Fentress County is a pretty remote rural county, and when you need emergency care, if it's more than, say, 35, 40 minutes away, your chances of survival diminish remarkably, and so we needed to fix that problem. And so I worked with the county executive, a guy named Jimmy Johnson, always easy to remember because my best friend in elementary school was Jimmy Johnson, so different Jimmy Johnson, but Executive Johnson was a bulldog on this issue, and fairly early in his term as mayor, which has just been coterminous with mine, he figured out that the CEO at that time of UT Medical Center had a home in Fentress County. And so he laid in wait for this guy, and when he came to pay his property taxes, he ambushed him. And he said, "You're going to help us build a new hospital or solve this healthcare problem in Fentress County." And that led to a discussion, and this gentleman engaged. And so we all got involved together, and we worked on this problem. And I'm proud to say that 2 years ago, we cut the ribbon on a new standalone emergency room and clinic in Fentress County, and it's working out splendidly. And we were able to determine or find a fairly obscure provision in federal Medicare law that allows for such a facility when it's a partnership between a public entity and a nonprofit entity to bill at the preferred rates under Medicare, which has been critically important in making that successful. And so that venture has been very successful. Today, Fentress County has emergency care, and they have a pretty robust health clinic there. And what it allows is, if there are emergency cases, they can get them to this emergency room, emergency facility, and triage those cases. And if the person needs more extensive care, they can then get them moved on to a critical care hospital elsewhere. And I think this is the model because this was not hugely expensive. And it's sustainable economically because you don't have to have the full service hospital that some communities struggle to support. And this is a model that is being now replicated. I just got to be at the groundbreaking ceremony in McNairy County, Selmer, Tennessee, Buford-Pusser country, for those of you who are dialing in on where that is, down in southwest Tennessee. And they have just followed that blueprint and broke ground here earlier this year on a new standalone emergency room and clinic. It's a partnership between McNairy County and Magnolia Healthcare. In this case, they've got even a little twist to it. Magnolia is a nonprofit hospital based in Corinth, Mississippi. And so it's across state lines, but it still works. And I think this could be the blueprint for how we solve this problem without breaking the bank across Tennessee. Access to health care is a critical issue, and I'll just add one little thing, and that is all across the state, even in communities that have hospitals, we have a problem with insufficient care being provided to the long-term mentally ill. And if you talk to sheriffs, if you talk to hospital emergency department directors, if you talk with anybody, and I know we've got some council members and other commissioners here who deal with the homeless, what you're going to hear is that many of the people in jail, many of the people coming in and out of emergency rooms, and a high percentage of those who are homeless are actually suffering from long-term chronic mental health care conditions that are going untreated. And so as a state, we need to address that. And I think the next governor needs to roll up their sleeves and go to work on that. And I will tell you I will, and I think I'm equipped to help get that problem solved.
Well, we have time for one more question. Does anyone from the audience have a question for Congressman Rose?
I do.
Okay.
Do you support ICE coming to Tennessee and cleaning it up?
Absolutely. And I have been a stalwart supporter. I ran for Congress.
Well, I was just gonna say, she asked about ICE,
I'm sorry.
supporting ICE. I just wanted everyone to know what you.
Yes, so the question was, do you support ICE, immigrations and customs enforcement coming to our state? And I very much do. And here's what I'll say about that. I ran for Congress because I felt like President Trump had a good vision for getting this country back on track, for shaking things up, and I think we needed that. And so I have been a 100% supporter of President Trump's policies and including on ICE. And I will tell you, we've been through a very difficult period because the Democrats in Congress, to a person, have resisted funding ICE and Customs and Border Protection. And that, you've seen this fight play out. Going back to last fall, they were willing to put you in harm's way, to put American citizens at risk, to pursue their radical agenda of defunding the police. In this case, the federal police are tasked with controlling our border. Now, one of the things that I think is most remarkable about President Trump's record over the last 18 months has been that he took the same oath of office as his predecessor, Joe Biden. And we all remember that Joe Biden said, well, there's just nothing I can do about the border unless the Congress comes in and helps me out. Well, then President Trump gets sworn in, and in 60 days, he stops the flow of illegals into this country. And now, for more than a year, we've had zero catch and release. So the border is under control, and the president did it through the sheer power of his leadership.
And if that didn't make the Democrats mad enough, he had wrestling on the White House lawn last night. So.
And so, I think the president won a very meaningful, decisive victory in 2024. And he campaigned on what he was going to do. He said, I'm going to get the border under control, and I'm going to deport criminal illegal aliens from this country. And sadly, we see our sanctuary cities, and we've got a couple of 2 or 3 in this state that flirt with that themselves, and many states and cities around the country who have been resisting the president's basically mandate from the American people to get criminal illegals out of our country. And so I absolutely support that. I voted for that repeatedly and will continue to do that. And I think there's a very real role for the governor in making sure that every county and every city in Tennessee cooperates with federal authorities to deal with the immigration issue.
And you've been to the border with President Trump. I mean, you've seen it for yourself. He has supported building and finishing the wall. We believe that a nation without borders is no nation at all. And that our citizenship, part of protecting our citizenship is protecting the sovereignty of our nation, which means that if you come here, you should come here legally. We understand that there's a time and a place for foreign workers, but there's a process for it too. And we need to implement our laws. And I appreciate you asking that question. We should support law enforcement and ICE.
I just had a question, and I know that you guys answered it in Knoxville, and I would like for you to answer it here, about Trump's endorsing you.
Yes, and you're going to see some advertising that would try to confuse you about this, but the president met with Speaker Mike Johnson and I now almost 3 months ago, and after a visit, one of those pitch me moments, I got to sit in the Oval Office for about an hour and talk to the president and make my case. And at the end of that period, President Trump said, okay, I'm not going to endorse her. I'm going to let the people of Tennessee decide, her being my opponent. I'm going to stay out of this race. Now, he's endorsed me all 4 times that I ran for Congress, but my appeal to him was, let Tennesseans decide. Let them decide who they want to be. And he gave me that commitment. He reiterated it about 2 months ago on Air Force One, and if you don't believe me, you can go read about it in the news media. They've reported on it. The president visited with a number of the members of Congress that were on Air Force One with him following the Memphis Safe Task Force Roundtable that you may have seen reported. He came to Memphis, and I got to ride back with him on Air Force One with 5 of my fellow House members. And he came in to visit me, and they said 2 things, and this is why I'm relating the story. He came in and he said, "John, how's your race going?" Now, this is after his initial commitment that he'd made in the Oval Office. And I said, "Well, thank you, Mr. President, it's going very well." And then he turned to my colleagues, some of whom have endorsed my opponent, and he said it like this, with his 2 fingers on it. He said, "You know, I'm not going to endorse her because John has been 100% supportive of me." And I know, and you can know too, that the thing that stands out most in the president's mind, and this may offend some of you, I know some people disagree about this, but he said, "You were with me on January 6th, the lowest point in my political career. You promised to be with me, and you stuck with me, and your opponent didn't. And that's why I'm going to stay out of this race." And so don't confuse, don't get misled about that.
Questions from the audience?
With Trump's re-emphasis on the polar industry, Tennessee, East Tennessee, particularly, Kentucky, Virginia, even Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, what do you feel about that happening over here in Tennessee where you keep states?
Yeah, so the president's already taken pretty demonstrative action here, and it may have escaped some of you, but you know, under President Obama, the government issued rules under the Clean Air Act that basically made it impossible for coal-fired power generation to continue. And so we were headed toward a world where all that was going to get shut down, including the Kingston Steam Plant and the Cumberland Fossil Plant over in Houston County. And so President Trump here just a matter of weeks ago reversed those decisions so that those plants can stay open. Now, unfortunately, TVA had already shut down some of our coal-fired generation, a lot of it, and that's put us in a difficult place where we're struggling to provide the energy. I mentioned energy was one of the issues. So we're struggling to provide the energy. It's not just a Tennessee Valley problem, it's a national problem. And so that buys us some time because we get to keep those power generation facilities. And if you listen to the news, you know that President Trump has recently talked about clearing the way for new coal generation. And I think that would be fine. I think the president's made it very clear that he wants an all of the above energy policy. You may have seen, we just reported this week, you know, America today is energy independent, including oil. Here's the really interesting thing. You might not know this, but just this past weekend it was announced that for the first time in decades, the United States is now the #1 exporter of fossil fuels. We're the #1, not just are we self-sufficient, we export more fossil fuels than Saudi Arabia and Russia, that, you know, historically were the big players in that market for supplying the world. And so it just is a testament to when you have great leadership and why leadership matters, then you can do things that everyone says is impossible. And now, I will say this, being right here in Anderson County, the future of power generation in the United States is nuclear. 3rd generation, existing nuclear, and also new nuclear. And the great thing for Tennessee is that we're on the cutting edge. We're in the pole position on that front. So we've got the first in the nation small modular reactor site at Clinch River that's been permitted. And the site has been permitted, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is promising that later this year they're going to issue the construction permit. So Tennessee is going to be leading the way for North America in terms of the nuclear renaissance that's coming. And that's a great thing for Tennessee. And I will tell you, the next governor needs to make sure we stay on track there.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us at Apple Blossom in Clinton. I know I learned a lot about who you are and what you want to do for the state of Tennessee, and we look forward to watching you become the next governor.
Thank you. I do hope that I can earn your support, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.